Here in Nashville, we certainly echo your thoughts in New York, thoughts and prayers with the Mets general manager, Sandy Alderson. We do have John Ricco here, though. And, John, before we get into the nuts and bolts of things, from a baseball perspective, how does Sandy's absence this week affect the day-to-day operations?
Well, certainly when you're at the winter meetings, you'd love to have your leader with you, and especially when he's a leader like Sandy. But the reality of it is so much of our business is conducted over the phone and through meetings. We have the rest of our staff here, and this is well documented. It's a pretty veteran staff. We've been through this many times. We know what we need to do, and we have access to Sandy basically whenever we need it. So I don't think it will affect us too much, other than, you'd love to have him here with us.
John, talking about being here at the winter meetings now, Ben Zobrist being, right at the top of the list for you guys. You tried to acquire him before the trade deadline last summer. A little too pricey in terms of talent. Now it seems like you focused all your resources for now on him. But why him? Why does he have to be the guy that's kind of at the top of your list?
Well, when you look at what we need and what we're trying to do with this team, we're trying to add some depth and versatility to what we think is already a pretty good team. And Ben really hits the marks on all of that. Now you throw on top of it the approach he's shown at the plate, and also you saw the way he performed in the playoffs and specifically in the World Series. It gives you comfort to know that on the big stage he's gonna show up, and all of those things are really attractive to us.
John, there was some thought initially that Zobrist might make his decision before we got here. Obviously, that's not the case. We're here. He's still out there. Do you guys have a sense from your discussions with his camp when that might resolve, and if that could be really even a day-to-day, minute-to-minute situation while you're here?
Our sense is it's not minute-to-minute, but I think it's going to be shorter than longer. I don't think it's going to be weeks. Really, it's Ben's decision ultimately, but could it happen while we're out here? Yeah, I think it could.
Does the Zobrist decision have to take place, John, before you guys can move forward with any other signings this offseason? Is that the first domino that has to fall, or do you have room to operate outside of it?
No, I don't think so. I think in the infield specifically, it probably has to be the first domino because we don't have a lot of open spaces there. But in terms of bullpen or maybe the outfield spot, no, we don't have to wait, and we're not going to wait. We're going to look and see, and if there's a deal out there to be made, we're going to make it.
Well, John, the drumbeat for Yoenis Cespedes to come back to the Mets was all we heard for 2 months at the end of last season, and also went to the playoffs. Faded some after that. Are there chances for a return here? I mean, how's the market looking? Do you think there's a chance perhaps cooling and maybe coming back some?
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen, the starting pitching market has taken off and really moved forward, but the position player market has not. And Sandy had been in contact last week, as recently as last week, with Cespedes' representatives. Right now, I would put it as unlikely that we bring him back, but it's still a possibility. We still had some dialogue, and we'll see where that goes.
There's some players, John, that could fit you guys, but are attached to the draft pick compensation. You obviously went there last year with Michael Kadire. How much of an impediment would that be in free agency this year? Would you rule out giving up that draft pick, or is that something you'd be open to?
I think in general we're going to be really reluctant to do that. If it was a deal that made so much sense, we had to do it. As you've seen with Sandy over the last few years, there's no non-starters. I mean, we don't operate that way, but that would be a tough pill to swallow.
John, as we've seen not just this year but in recent years past, starting pitching that gets to the free agent market is pretty pricey. With that in mind, is there any shot, whether it's this week or by the end of this offseason, that you guys start to consider maybe trying to extend some of your starting pitchers' multi-year deals?
Well, generally, in terms of this week, you don't really see that type of activity going on. We'll probably meet with their representatives only because we're going to meet with agents who represent free agents, and they'll probably represent some of our guys. So we'll talk about that. But extensions are generally done in spring training or later in the offseason. And even with that, we haven't had too many even internal discussions yet about those long-term deals. We're still kind of focused on adding some pieces. At some point, though, once this team is in place, we'll turn our attention to that, and maybe something happens. But right now, that's a long way off.
I think another thing, John, with kind of the elephant in the room right now, we focus so much time on Zobrist, is that help for the bullpen. That's an area of the team that probably has to be reshaped to some degree. You have the person at the back end in Familia, but what are the chances you think of maybe adding a significant bullpen arm this week?
I think bullpen is going to be something we're looking at, lefty and righty. I think more to add some depth. I don't see us playing on the high end guys, but I think we will be looking towards. Now, whether that happens, again, it takes two to tango. I can't say. You look back over the years, Generally, we come out of here making 1 or 2 moves, and that would be, if I was going to bet, might be an area where you'll see us do something.
Jen, you guys seem pretty reluctant, if not completely reluctant, to part with Zack Wheeler in a trade, which you may wish we didn't know this, but you were not so reluctant in July to part with Zack. That specifically, the phone call that he made to Sandy, that Sandy spoke of to us after all that went down, did that impact Wheeler's future with the team? Did that move Sandy to take him off the board, per se?
No, I wouldn't put it that strongly. Obviously, it was really nice to see, and you want to know that guys want to be here and want to be part of what we have going on. Certainly, and it's even more impressive prior to what we did. This is before we made our run. But I think one of the things that has changed is now we're closer to him coming back and being on the field. So whereas when we initially made that deal that didn't happen, that's a year off. Now you're looking at a guy who's going to be back mid-season. And so, I think that has changed. Whether we would move him or not, again, we don't have any absolutes. So we'll see.
John, one of the things that you guys did once Sandy Alderson came over was really look to reload the farm system. And you've seen a lot of those guys come to fruition at the major league level. You've also had to move some of those pieces in trades for Yoenis, Cespedes, what have you. As you look towards the future now, is restocking the farm system a priority right now?
I think that you never lose that as a priority. You always have to keep feeding your farm system. That's where Paul DiPodesta and his group, Tommy Tanis, have been so valuable. On the international side, Chris Becerra, you never stop doing that. So whether we're going to start trying to do it via trade, that's a different story. I don't think we're there yet. Obviously, if you can do it, great, but we're focused on this team. We're a step away from winning the whole thing, so we're looking to make this team and get over that last hurdle.
Well, speaking of this team and getting over that last hurdle, one of the main reasons, obviously, you're in the position you are is this young starting pitching and this controllable young starting pitching right now. With that in mind, though, and with the thought of trying to win the World Series, is there a certain urgency about this week in particular, maybe more so than years past at the winter meetings?
I don't think so. I don't think we operate that way. I think we have an opportunity here because all the teams are together to gather information and possibly make a deal. But I don't think Sandy, and at least the way we've operated in the past, we just don't operate with that gun to our head because that's when you make bad decisions. I think you have to be open to making moves and seeing what's out there, but I don't come in here saying we have to leave here with X, Y, or Z done. We just haven't operated with that type of mentality.